No one understood why a man so polite, so clean, with such a sweet voice and elegant manners, accepted a janitor position at that forgotten school in the interior of Ghana. Makoen arrived on a cloudy morning, wearing clothes far too simple for someone who carried himself with such upright posture. He had a small backpack on his shoulders and a carefully folded cloth in his pants pocket. His gaze was calm, yet distant, as if he were searching for something or someone he himself couldn't name. No one knew that behind that worn-out shirt was the heir to one of the largest mining empires on the continent. A billionaire, lonely, and lost. It was at the Banda Community School that he decided to begin his search. There, where the walls were cracked and the children laughed even without shoes. Where the tired adults smiled with their eyes. Where no one would recognize him, and no one would pretend because of his last name. Makoen wanted to know, was there still true love in the world? A love that couldn't be bought. A gaze that wouldn't see him as a number, but as a soul. That's where he met Zola. Zola had an easy smile, but tired shoulders. She had been a volunteer teacher for almost 2 years, caring for the children, as if they were her own. She lived in a small shack near the hill, with her sick grandmother and teenage brother. Her father had vanished during a crossing to Europe. Her mother died young. Since then, Zola became everything at once. Sister, daughter, nurse, neighbor, and pillar. She spoke softly but firmly. She never complained, and always shared the little she had. Makoen saw her for the first time sweeping the school entrance, wearing a worn-out dress and open sandals. Her hair was tied up loosely, and her face glistened with sweat. Yet, there was a light in her, not the kind of obvious beauty, but a presence. The kind of person who lingers in a room even after they leave. "The new janitor?" she asked gently, offering him a glass of water. He simply nodded. "Welcome. We don't have much here, but whatever we have, we share." Makoen thanked her in a low voice. That day, for the first time in a long while, he felt a warmth in his chest. As the weeks went by, the two kept crossing paths in shared silences. Zola taught the children while he washed the hallways. She hummed softly while writing on the board, and he, outside, pretended not to listen. But he did. Every note, every gesture. He started arriving earlier, brought fresh fruit, pretending it was leftovers from the market. Fixed broken chairs, nailed loose planks. The school director found it odd. He had never seen a janitor who spoke 3 languages and quoted philosophy in casual conversations. But Zola never asked. She simply saw Makoen, as he was there, and that touched him more than he cared to admit. But not everything was peaceful. Zola had a friend, Lindive, the kind who smiled to your face but laced her words with venom. She was always trying to convince Zola that no one is worth it, that love is just interest, and that she was wasting her youth in a place that only drained her. "You're killing yourself for someone else's children, for a man with no future." "He has a name," Zola once replied, tired. "And he has a heart too." Lindive laughed. "A heart doesn't pay for your grandma's medicine, or your brother's school." Zola went silent, but she felt it. Inside, the fear of being wrong began to grow. Makoen was good, but poor, and she too tired for another disappointment. That night, Zola climbed the hill with aching feet and a heavy heart. When she opened the door to her home, she found her brother washing rice and her grandmother coughing again. She closed her eyes for a moment. If love were easy, it wouldn't hurt this much. Meanwhile, Makoen was writing in his leather notebook. Inside it, he kept secrets no one there could imagine. "She doesn't know who I am. And maybe because of that, she's the only one who truly sees me. Do you believe that true love can only happen when no one has anything to hide? Have you ever trusted someone, even without knowing where they came from? Tell me in the comments where you're listening to this story from. And if you've ever fallen in love with someone the world considered a nobody, this story is for you. Click the subscribe button and come with us to the end. Sometimes, the purest heart lives in the most invisible body. Zola woke before the sun. The town was still asleep as she walked through the dirt roads with a basket of fruit on her head, balanced as if it were part of her body. Her bare feet didn't complain about the path, because her heart had already been hardened by far worse things: abandonment, debts, broken promises. It was just another ordinary day. Or so she thought. At the entrance of the resort, she stopped as usual and adjusted the colorful scarf over her hair. She smiled at the security guard and entered through the side of the building, where suppliers made their deliveries. No one paid much attention to her there, for the wealthy and the managers. Zola was just one of dozens of women selling fresh fruit to the guests. But that day, someone noticed her. McCohen. He was leaning on his broom, shirt damp with sweat, worn-out cap covering part of his face. When Zola walked by, his eyes followed her. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't desire. It was curiosity. She had something different. A firm walk, a lively gaze, and a smile that seemed to escape without reason. "Good morning," he ventured, in a timid tone. Zola looked surprised. It wasn't common for men at the resort to speak to her, especially with such respect. Most just asked the price or walked by without a word. "Good morning," she replied, with a slight nod, and kept walking. McCohen stood there, motionless. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. A memory of his mother, perhaps. Or of a time when he still believed the world was made of good people, not flatterers. He spent the rest of the morning discreetly watching the movement. He cleaned the hallways attentively, but always kept an eye on the employee cafeteria, where Zola delivered the fruit. She was kind to everyone, but maintained a respectful distance. She didn't laugh loudly, didn't flirt. She did her job with dignity. That's when he knew. She wasn't like the others. The next day, it rained heavily. Zola arrived soaked, but her basket was covered by an improvised plastic tarp. The fruits were intact. Her dress clung to her body, and her face was still smiling. McCohen ran to the back entrance with a large umbrella. "Here," he shouted, already opening the fabric. "You're going to get completely drenched." Zola hesitated, suspicious, but she accepted it. "Thank you. I never get an umbrella, only rain." McCohen laughed, a sincere laugh that didn't match the old uniform and the dirt on his hands. "Me too. But today is different." They stood there, side by side, for seconds that felt longer than the rain itself. Zola said goodbye with a wave and entered the building. McCohen followed her with his eyes, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: admiration. But what he didn't know was that someone was watching. In the staff kitchen, Sauda, the manager's niece, was cleaning her nails with a small knife. She was pretty, vain, and dreamed of marrying a rich man. She had already tried to get the attention of the new janitor, but he ignored her. Now she watched the scene between him and that soaked fruit vendor. "Pathetic," she murmured. "Maybe he really is just a poor man. Probably likes filth." She didn't know her words would soon turn against her. That night, McCohen couldn't sleep. The image of Zola, wet, holding the umbrella with both hands, stuck in his memory like a painting. She was beautiful, but not like the models he used to know. She was real, strong, and her eyes seemed to carry the weight of the world with grace. The next morning, he went down to the courtyard earlier than ever. He hoped to see her again, and he did. But something was wrong. Zola was crying, sitting on the ground near toppled crates of fruit. A rude employee accused her of cheating on the weight and had thrown all her produce on the floor. She tried to explain, but no one listened. Not the manager, not the customers. She was alone with dirty hands and crushed pride. McCohen didn't think twice. He ran over and knelt beside her. He began picking up the fruits carefully, one by one. Zola looked at him, surprised. No man had ever done that for her. "Don't lower yourself for me," she said, voice trembling. "I'm not lowering myself," he replied, looking up. "I'm staying at your level, and you deserve so much more than this." She didn't answer, but her tears now had a different taste. And there, on the dirty ground of a luxury resort, under the scornful eyes of the rich and the silence of cowards, two hearts recognized each other. Not for what they had, but for who they were. Have you ever seen someone humiliated in public and still hold their head high? Have you ever helped someone while everyone else was just watching? Tell me where you're listening to this story from. And if you've ever met someone who truly saw you, right when you most needed to be seen. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This story is just beginning. And true love hasn't even shown its strength yet. Night slowly fell over the village. In the red clay house where Zola lived with her grandmother and brother, dinner was simple. A pot of corn porridge and silence at the table. The grandmother coughed constantly, but refused to take her medicine. She no longer believed it would make a difference. Her brother, Khalil, came back from the fields with his feet covered in mud, and the hope already fading from his eyes. Still, Zola smiled. She always smiled, not because life was good, but because if she fell apart, who would lift the others? That night, after everyone was asleep, she stepped outside to look at the stars, and thought about the man with the umbrella, the janitor with sad eyes, the only one who didn't look at her as merchandise, but as a human being. The next day, McCohen showed up earlier than ever at the school. He carried a grocery bag and a brown paper package. "What's that?" asked the doorman. "A donation." But he didn't say for whom. He discreetly entered the storage room, left the bag behind the administration office, and went on to his cleaning shift. Later, Zola was called by the principal. "Zola, someone left this with your name on it. There's no sender." She opened it and found 2 bottles of cough syrup, a brand new notebook with clean pages, a bar of handmade soap, a small pouch with dried tea leaves, and finally, an envelope with enough money for a week's worth of medicine. Zola froze, looked around. Who? The principal shrugged. But she knew. Outside, McCohen was sweeping the courtyard, with sweat on his forehead and steady hands. She wanted to run to him, to thank him, to ask why. But she didn't. Because deep down, she understood that when help comes from the heart, it doesn't need applause. In the following days, McCohen began to notice the little things. How Zola held back her laughter when a child told a silly joke. How she tied her hair with a pencil because she had no more pins. How she hemmed her dress during recess, hidden behind the water tank. He saw it all, and each small gesture made his heart ache a little more. It wasn't pity. It was admiration. She was strong without becoming hardened, sweet without losing herself, beautiful in a way money could never buy. One afternoon, during break time, Zola found him in the hallway. "Was it you who left the medicine?" McCohen hesitated. "Maybe." "Why?" He looked up, serious. "Because no one should be coughing out of neglect, and no one who helps others should go hungry alone." Zola didn't respond, but her eyes said everything. There was tenderness, gratitude, and something blooming, something dangerous. The next day, Khalil, Zola's brother, showed up at the school crying. He had been attacked by 2 men on the road. They said he owed money to the farm boss, that his sister was acting all high and mighty now. They threw the boy to the ground and tore his shirt. Zola panicked. McCohen was the one who found her crying behind the school. "I can't take it anymore," she said, trembling. "I try, I smile, I endure, but there comes a time when the world weighs too much, McCohen." He knelt beside her. "Zola, you don't have to carry it all alone." She looked at him with red eyes. "And who's going to stand by me when the world decides I'm worth nothing?" He took a deep breath. He was about to say more, to tell his secret, but he remained silent, because it wasn't the right time yet. She needed to know that he was there not out of guilt, not because of money, but because of love. And that takes time. That night, he left an anonymous note under her door. "You are not the problem. You are the strength the world is afraid to see shine." Zola cried in silence. For the first time in months, she cried not from pain, but from relief. Time passed slowly for McCohen. Each morning he put on the same faded blue uniform, laced up his worn-out boots, and showed up at the cafe before the sun had even touched the dusty village streets. He washed the floors, wiped the tables, and, at times, washed himself from the inside. Humility didn't make him smaller. On the contrary, with every simple task, McCohen felt freer from the heavy shell of his old life. But what really kept him there was her, Zola. The way she arranged the shelves, the way she treated customers, even the rude ones. The way she smiled even after exhausting days. She never asked about his past, and maybe that's what enchanted him the most. Zola saw the man, not the mystery, not the silence, only what he showed her. But the world doesn't always allow the truth to remain quiet. One afternoon, while McCohen was sweeping the front sidewalk, a black pickup truck stopped across the street. Inside, a man in dark sunglasses watched him. The same man who had recently visited the capital city at the request of the real McCohen, back when that name still appeared in headlines and million-dollar meetings. It was Tobias, his personal assistant. "What are you doing, sir?" he asked, after finally crossing the street. "Everyone is in a panic. Your disappearance is causing rumors. Your image is on the verge of being tarnished." McCohen kept his eyes on the ground, but the broom in his hands trembled slightly. "Tell the board I'm sticking to the plan. I haven't finished what I came to find." Tobias stared at him, confused. "And what exactly are you looking for among dishcloths and buckets of dirty water?" McCohen finally raised his eyes. The answer came firm. "I'm looking for the truth. The kind of truth money can't buy." Tobias sighed, defeated. "And what if someone finds out? What if they use this against you?" McCohen simply replied, "Then, for the first time, I'll know who's really with me, and who only ever saw my name." Across the street, Zola watched from a distance. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw McCohen's rigid stance, the serious tone, the authoritative look in the other man's eyes. Something was wrong, and she felt it. That night, she didn't see him return home. For the first time since he'd started renting a small room behind the market, Zola didn't hear his tired footsteps or the sound of water boiling for the tea he drank before bed. The silence was different. It wasn't peaceful, it was absent. The next day, he reappeared, but something in his eyes hadn't been there before. "Are you okay?" Zola asked, placing 2 mugs of coffee on the back table. McCohen hesitated. He thought about speaking, about telling the truth, but he couldn't. "Not yet. Just an old problem trying to catch up with me," he said, looking away. Zola nodded slowly. She sensed there was more, but she respected his time. What she didn't know was that this old problem was about to explode. 2 days later, Tobias, impatient, made a mistake. He called McCohen's company headquarters from a local phone. The signal was traced. A sensationalist reporter, already suspicious about the disappearance of the African billionaire, connected the dots. And in less than a week, a scandalous headline was spreading across forums and online newspapers. "Missing billionaire may be hiding in a poor village under false identity." The photo was old, but the eyes were unmistakable. Zola saw the news on her friend Kayamika's phone, who came to the cafe eager to gossip. "Isn't that him?" she asked, pointing at the screen. "I swear that's your mystery janitor. Look at the mouth, the nose, and his real name is McCohen Desta. Billionaire, CEO, owns half the city of Addis Ababa." Zola slowly took the phone. The world stopped. She knew that face, that look, that man. But how? That night, McCohen returned to the cafe. He was ready. He would tell everything. Open his heart. Take the risk. But Zola wasn't there. The door was closed early. The sign turned off. And inside, alone in the dark, she was crying. "Why did you lie?" she whispered. "Why did you make me believe we were the same?" Outside, McCohen rested his forehead against the closed door. He felt the weight of what needed to be done, of what could be lost. The love he had found in the humble woman was now hanging by a thread, because the truth he kept to protect her might be the very thing that would drive her away. Have you ever trusted someone only to feel betrayed, even if your heart said otherwise? Have you ever feared love, unsure if it was really you they loved, or just what you had to offer? Tell me where you're listening to this story from. And tell me, in Zola's place, would you forgive? Tap the subscribe button, because the next chapter will change everything. Zola walked through the narrow village streets with a restless heart. Since the kiss, since the sincere look in Kamisi's eyes, something had begun to bloom inside her. But along with hope came fear. He seemed too good, attentive, present, respectful, different from any man she had ever met. And still, something didn't add up. How could someone like him, with such soft hands and refined speech, have known real misery? She wanted to silence the doubt, but the world wouldn't let her. "Zola, be careful with that man," an older neighbor warned. "People who are too polished usually hide something." Zola laughed softly, trying to seem carefree. But the doubt was already there, growing like a thorn. That night, the market was lively. It was a night of music, small bites, and dances around the fire. Kamisi showed up in a clean shirt with a shy smile. His eyes found hers like the rest of the world had disappeared. "Would you dance with me?" he asked, holding out his hand. Zola hesitated and accepted. The beat of the drums matched the rhythm of their hearts. They danced under the African sky as if nothing else existed. They laughed, gently touched, and looked at each other like two souls that recognized one another. But on the edge of the celebration, someone was watching. Melissa, Kamisi's ex, or rather, Makoen's ex, had followed the billionaire's trail in secret. When she saw him dancing with a poor woman in simple clothes, with hands that clearly labored, she nearly choked with rage. The next morning, Zola felt the world on her shoulders. When she arrived at the fabric shop where she worked, there was an envelope taped to the door with her name on it. Inside, a photo. It was Kamisi in a suit, on the cover of a financial newspaper. The name was different, Makoen Dubé, heir to the Dubé Empire, billionaire, international investor, owner of Dubé Holdings. Zola's world spun. Her legs nearly gave out. Her neighbor's words echoed. And with them came a wave of pain. He had lied. The man who kissed her soul was someone else. Without thinking, she ran from the shop straight to what they claimed was his uncle's house. The old man who pretended to be a relative greeted her with a nervous smile. "I knew this charade wouldn't last," he said. "But the boss paid me well to keep the story going." Zola broke down. "He lied the whole time?" "He said he wanted to be truly loved." The old man shrugged. "Sounds like you with a test." She stumbled away, eyes brimming, heart shattered. That same afternoon, Kamisi arrived in the village, his face glowing. He carried simple flowers in his hands, picked from a field. He was ready to ask her to be his, for real. But when he got to the shop, he found only silence. Zola had disappeared. He ran to her house, knocked on the door. Her grandmother came out with hardened eyes. "She knows who you are, billionaire. I can explain." Explain it to her heart. Because that was the only part of her that believed in you. And the door shut. Cold. Final. Unforgiving. Kamisi stood there. Speechless. Groundless. The man who could buy anything couldn't buy back the trust he had lost. Meanwhile, Zola cried alone by the riverbank. She screamed. Screamed like someone whose soul had been betrayed. Why? Why lie? Why make a poor woman fall in love with a lie? She threw the photo into the river, but she couldn't throw away the feeling. After all, who did she love? The man in the suit? Or the man with simple hands who carried water for her grandmother? She no longer knew. The market was busy that morning. The smell of spices in the air, the voices of vendors negotiating, and children running between stalls made everything seem like any other day. But for Zola, the world felt suspended. She walked with hesitant steps, unsure if she still belonged there. Since leaving the resort, her heart had found no rest. Jamal's silence haunted her like a shadow, and worse. The weight of everything she had discovered pushed him even further away. But then something happened. "Zola." The voice was soft, but unmistakable. She turned slowly, like someone afraid to believe. And there he was. Not the janitor. Not the simple man in a faded shirt and slippers. It was Jamal in his true form. Light linen shirt, Italian shoes, a discreet but expensive gold watch. Hair trimmed, beard well-groomed. Beside him, a driver waiting in silence. And farther back, a luxury car parked discreetly. But the eyes were the same. "Jamal," she whispered, holding her breath. Or, "Malik Jamal Bakery." He tried to smile, but there was pain behind his eyes. "I know you found out. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for every lie. Zola stepped back. Her hands trembled. You played with me, Jamal. You let me open my heart to someone who didn't even exist. You made me dream of a future with a lie. I never lied about what I felt. He took a slow step toward her. Every day at that resort, every minute by your side, I was more myself than in any boardroom or penthouse. She swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to run. The other wanted to believe. And what do you want now? To buy me? To silence me with an expensive ring and a non-disclosure agreement? No. I came to ask for your forgiveness and to show you that none of this matters if I lose you. Jamal snapped his fingers discreetly. The driver opened the car's trunk. Zola narrowed her eyes, confused. From it, he took out a large woven basket, covered with linen cloth. He set it on the ground and pulled back the fabric. Inside were cleaning tools, buckets, brooms, cloths, and a pair of gloves, exactly like the ones he wore the first day she saw him. Zola stared, not understanding. I left the company's board. I handed over control to my brother. He looked her in the eyes. From now on, I work with my hands. I want to earn every second by your side. Start from zero. With you. As a man, not a title. She brought her hand to her mouth. The market around them seemed to stop. People watched from a distance. A soft murmur began. I don't want you to accept me because I have money, Zola. I want you to accept me even if I have nothing. Because you are already everything. The silence was overwhelming for a moment. Zola knelt, kneeling before the bucket. She picked up the gloves and held them in his hands. You didn't have to do this, Jamal. But because you did, I believe you. Tears streamed down her face. He was crying too. And there, in the middle of the market, surrounded by frozen vendors and curious children, Jamal and Zola embraced like people who had survived a war. Because, in a way, they had. Shall we go home? He whispered, still holding her hands. Yes, but only if the house is built with truth. From now on, everything is truth. The days after Zola and Jamal's reunion were like balm. The village felt lighter. Laughter returned to her grandmother's house. And Zola no longer walked with slumped shoulders, but with her head held high, as someone who had finally been chosen. People who once looked at her with silence or suspicion now saw her differently. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of respect. Even after revealing who he was, Jamal didn't abandon the disguise. He continued going to the market in simple clothes, helping neighbors carry sacks of rice or stacking firewood behind the community school. It was as if he needed to prove to himself, and to her, that his essence wasn't in his wealth, but in what he did when no one was watching. But not everyone rejoiced in his return. At the mansion where he grew up, far from the dusty village roads, someone was watching his every step with poisoned eyes. Isa, his cousin on his mother's side, right hand in business and eternal rival. Jamal had always had everything, except the coldness that Isa saw as a virtue. When Isa learned that the billionaire had fallen for a simple village woman, he saw a threat, not just to the good name of the family, but to his secret plan to take over the holding they both managed. You're involved with the janitor, Jamal, he scoffed, finally confronting him in the city office. What kind of delusion is this? You're throwing everything away for a woman who doesn't even know how to use cutlery properly. Jamal didn't respond. He just took a deep breath and kept reading documents about a social project he wanted to launch in Zola's village. You don't get it, do you? Isa went on. You're so blind you don't see the risk. What if she's a gold digger? What if she's just waiting for the right moment to expose you, sue you, take what she can? Then he threw his final bait. By the way, maybe she's not as innocent as she looks. Jamal looked up. What do you mean by that? Isa gave a sly smile, as if savoring poison before spitting it. Maybe you should talk to Mr. Adam, that shopkeeper in the village. They say he saw Zola sneaking out of a married man's house, not long before he showed up. The lie was so well told, it stung like the truth. That same afternoon, Jamal drove to the village. He was tense, silent, his face hard like it hadn't been in weeks. When Zola opened the door, she felt it in the air. Did something happen? He hesitated. I need to ask you something. and I need you to be honest with me." She nodded uneasy. "Did you get involved with another man recently? Someone married?" Zola's eyes widened. "What? Of course not," she replied, hurt by the question. "There are rumors. And a man from the village, Adam, confirmed he saw you leaving someone's house in secret." She laughed in disbelief. "Adam? The same man who tried to grab me when I was 17 and got kicked out of my aunt's door." Jamal's blood ran cold. He didn't know that. "Jamal," she said firmly, "if you still need to question who I am after everything we've been through, then maybe you still see me as the invisible woman everyone else used to see." And what had been pain in her eyes now became pride. "I loved you before I knew who you were. I chose you because of how you treated others, because of how you looked at me with calm, because of how you laughed at the little things. I didn't choose you for your name, and even less for your money." She turned away, taking a deep breath to hold back the tears. "But if you don't trust me, then go. I don't need someone to protect me from the world. I just need someone just once to protect me from themselves." He tried to reach for her, but she stepped back and went inside, leaving the door half open, like someone still hoping he might come back. But Jamal didn't return that night. He stood there, outside her home, staring up at the dark sky, feeling the weight of his doubts, and realizing too late that hurting someone who only ever offered you love is the most cowardly kind of loss. Zola spent the following days in silence. She didn't cry. She didn't speak much. She simply went about her routine with the same dignity she had always carried. Her grandmother's house remained clean. The neighbor's laundry still hung to dry. But inside her there was a void, a hollow where hope used to live. Jamal's absence hurt more than she wanted to admit. Not because she depended on him, but because, for a moment, she believed this time would be different. That finally someone would choose her fully. But even he fell to the poison of appearances. Meanwhile, Jamal was drowning in guilt. He returned to the city, but couldn't focus. Meetings blurred. Contracts became distractions. Deep down, he could only think about Zola's wounded look, and that final phrase that cut deeper than any real betrayal. "If you still need to question who I am, then maybe you've never really seen me." In the middle of all that confusion, something unexpected happened. Isa, the ambitious cousin, had spread more than just rumors. Without Jamal knowing, he had bribed some local merchants to confirm lies. It was his way of destroying any chance the billionaire had of being involved with someone unworthy of the family. But the plan began to fall apart when a young delivery boy, Malik, Zola's friend's younger brother, overheard a conversation between Isa and Adam. Shocked, he went straight to Zola's grandmother's house and told her everything. "I couldn't keep this to myself, Zola. They're plotting against you. And against Mr. Jamal, too. I saw it. They paid Adam to make up the story. I swear." Zola was in shock. She had already suspected something, but hearing it hurt. That same afternoon, Malik traveled to the city with a single mission: to tell Jamal the truth. He was met with suspicion at the corporate building, of course. But he insisted. He stayed at the door for hours until he was finally noticed. And when Jamal heard Zola's name, he ordered them to bring Malik in immediately. Malik told him everything. No flourishes, no exaggeration, just the truth. And for the first time in weeks, Jamal's eyes filled with tears. "What have I done?" he whispered, staring into nothing. The next day, he fired Isa from the company, cut all commercial ties with those involved, and made a decision that would change the course of the story. He returned to the village, not with luxury cars or security guards, but on foot, under the sun, in sweaty clothes, just like the first day. He knocked on Zola's door. She opened it, and the silence between them was louder than any speech. But Jamal spoke, without pride, without defense. "I believed what I heard, when I should have trusted what we lived. I disrespected the purest feeling I've ever known. And if you never forgive me, I understand. But I needed to look into your eyes and say, I failed you. And if there's still a place, no matter how small, where I can start again, I'm here." Zola didn't answer right away. She just looked. She looked at the man before her. Sweaty, exhausted, regretful. Not the billionaire. Not the janitor. Just the man. And when she finally spoke, her voice didn't come with anger. It came with truth. Forgiveness doesn't erase what was done, but it can make room for what could still be. Jamal fell to his knees. Then let me at least try. Zola took a deep breath. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Get up. Let's talk. There, on the porch of the humble house, they sat side by side. And love, once crushed by pride, began to breathe again. And you? Have you ever had to forgive someone who broke your heart, but came back changed? Tell me where you're listening to this story from. And tell me if you believe true love is the kind that knows how to ask for forgiveness. Tap the subscribe button, because the ending is still to come, and it promises to move you. Jamal stood by the window of his office, now completely renovated, overlooking the neighborhood where it had all begun. Zola hadn't shown up in days. She didn't return messages. No signs of her. Time seemed frozen, caught between regret and waiting. The confession he had made in front of the whole community echoed in his mind like an unfinished song. He had stripped himself of wealth, of his name, of the protection of lies. But Zola wasn't there to see him fully. At the market, rumors spread. He lied to her the whole time, and still had the nerve to make a public scene? Rich or poor, a liar is a liar. Jamal knew the world's judgment would be merciless. But that no longer worried him. His only fear was losing the one woman who made him feel human. At Adia's house, Zola remained quiet. Her friend did everything to distract her, cooked her favorite meals, talked about village news, about the new dresses arriving from the north. But nothing broke through the wall Zola had built inside. On the night of Jamal's public announcement, she had watched hidden in the crowd. Watched the man kneel before a people who both applauded and condemned him. Saw his eyes, not proud, not desperate, but bare. And that disturbed her more than the lie itself. The sincerity of his surrender. You love him, don't you? Adia asked one night. Zola didn't answer right away. Her eyes were lowered, her fingers clutching her dress. I don't know what love is. But with him, it's like I could breathe again, she whispered. But now the air hurts. Adia sighed, knelt in front of her friend, and held her hands. Pain only means you felt something real, and that already makes you more alive than many who pretend to live with an empty heart. Days later, an envelope arrived in Zola's hands. It was thick, with her name written in cursive. Inside a single sheet and a golden metal badge. Jamal's cleaning ID now worn. The letter read, You met me when I was nothing, and it was then that I became everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you never doubt. The man you loved was real, even without the name, even without the money, even with the lies. I am Jamal, but I am more when I'm yours. I'll be at the old warehouse where we used to dance before sunrise. If you don't come, I'll know, and I'll leave. Zola read the letter so many times that her fingertips slightly tore the paper. The badge. She held it like it was a piece of her own soul. Midnight came quickly. Adia waited, eyes full of anticipation. Are you going? Zola didn't answer. She simply wrapped herself in her linen shawl, tied her hair into a loose bun, and walked outside, under the clearest sky she'd seen in days. At the warehouse, Jamal was alone. The floor still held footprints from the community, the dust of old dances, the scent of worn wood and memories. He wore simple clothes. No watch. No expensive shoes. No protection. He heard footsteps. Slowly, he turned. Zola entered quietly, wrapped in the silence that precedes an answer. Their eyes met. There were no shouts, no declarations, only the space between two people who had chosen not to run. You came, Jamal said, voice trembling. You called me, she replied. I never stopped calling you, he confessed. She hesitated, her eyes full. I'm still angry, she admitted. So am I, he replied. Angry at myself, for believing, and for still wanting to believe. Jamal stepped closer, one step at a time, as if respecting her space, and the time still needed, between hurt and forgiveness. I can't promise I'll be perfect, Zola. But I can promise that, with you, I'll never be a coward again. She lowered her eyes. Her lips trembled. I wanted to hate you, Jamal. I'd hate myself too if I hadn't met you. That last sentence broke something inside her. Her hands dropped to her sides. The badge she had been holding fell to the floor with a dry sound. Jamal bent down. He picked up the object and handed it back to her with both hands. This is how you saw me. This is how I learned to see myself. Keep it. Not for me, but so you never forget that love begins where pride ends. Zola took the badge. She looked at it, at that man who had once been a janitor, once been a millionaire, once been a lie, but who now, standing before her, was simply an unguarded heart. You really want to start over? She asked, eyes full of tears. I don't know how to start over with anyone else, he replied. She took a deep breath, and then she smiled. It wasn't wide nor confident, but it was the first since the pain. It was hope, and it was more than enough. They stepped closer. Their hands touched. Zola's forehead rested against his. And there, in the silence of an old warehouse, two broken lives promised to rebuild. And you, have you ever had to choose between holding a grudge or starting over? Have you ever loved someone enough to try, even without guarantees? That morning began in silence. But it was a different kind of silence. Calm. Alive. The kind that comes when the heart, even wounded, finally finds a place to rest. Zola woke up to the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. The smell of fresh bread came from the kitchen of the village house, where she now worked as a caregiver for children. Far from the judging eyes of others, far from the recent pain of a nearly irreparable heartbreak. It had been 3 weeks since she last saw Jamal. In that time, there were no messages, no letters, no explanations. Only silence. She thought it was over, that her love story with that unlikely man was just another illusion shattered by lies. Even with the forgiveness growing in her chest, she no longer knew if there was still a us. That morning, the lady who owned the house entered her room with a different look. There's someone waiting for you outside. Zola went down the stairs with her heart racing. The light blue dress she wore felt too simple for the moment, but it was the only one she had. As she passed through the porch, she stopped. There, in the middle of the blooming garden, was Jamal. But not Jamal the janitor, not Jamal the billionaire. It was just the man. He wore simple but elegant clothes, held a bouquet of white flowers in his hands, and carried a look that said everything words had always failed to express. You came, Zola whispered. I did, because I can't go on living knowing I hurt you. He took a step forward. Lying about who I was my biggest mistake. But hiding how I feel about you would be even worse. She remained silent, waiting. Zola, all my life, I've been surrounded by people who came close out of interest, status, or convenience. With you, I discovered something I never knew existed. Love without expectations. Respect without demands. Care without wanting anything in return. And still you deceived me, she said, pain still in her voice. Yes, and I've never regretted something so deeply. He knelt. I'm not here to ask you to forget. I'm here to ask you to start over. Slowly. In your time. If you still need to hate me a little, I understand. But let me try to be the man you deserve. He opened a small wooden box. Inside wasn't a diamond ring, but a simple silver one, with her name engraved on the inside. It's just a symbol. But I want you to know, I see you, and I choose you, not out of pity, not out of pride, but out of love. And if you allow me, I want to build something real with you. For real this time. Zola felt the tears fall. Not tears of hurt, but something new, something light. Why now, Jamal? Because now, I understand that love isn't what we feel when everything's perfect. It's what we choose when everything feels lost. She took a deep breath, and then slowly extended her hand. Then promise me one thing. Anything. That from now on, only the truth lives between us. He gently took her hand, slipping the ring on. I promise. And there, in the garden of that simple village house, without luxury, without applause, without an audience, two broken souls chose to try again. Months later, Jamal transformed one of the city's abandoned warehouses into a community school, named after Zola's mother. Together, they began running social projects for women in vulnerable situations, offering support, workshops, shelter, and opportunity. Zola was no longer known as the woman who was deceived, but as an inspiration. And Jamal, who had once been trapped by the weight of his last name, discovered the lightness of simply being a man, a whole man, beside the woman who taught him what true love really is. On a golden afternoon, seated beneath the shade of a baobab tree, he whispered, "You saved me, Zola." She smiled. "No, we saved each other." Have you ever believed that love can rise again, even after the deepest disappointment? Have you ever forgiven someone who hurt you, because you saw in them something the world never could? Tell me where you're listening to this story from. And if it touched your heart, share it with someone who also needs to believe in love again. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening until the end. With love, until next time.